See, black people could never be free under the system of capitalism. And I'm going to tell you why. Because capitalism is the whole reason why you were enslaved. It's not because you were black and African and white people don't like black people. No. Thomas Jefferson said in his book that the African slave was the most durable slave. This is why sometimes I can't have this conversation with people. There were white slaves, there were Asian slaves, they were all type of different slaves, even indigenous folks, right? But Africans made the more durable slave. Okay, so it make more sense to have African slaves than other slaves. I'm just thinking from a businessman point. Okay, so once you understand that, right, and you understand that capitalism is about profits over people, right? It's about property, capital, what's gonna make you money and profits. And Africans were the more durable slave. I could work you longer. And then once I started getting you for free, it's all about profit, baby. Right? So let's really look at it. Then once slavery was abolished, right, it went from enslavement to chain gangs, right, to convict leasing, to modern day slavery, which is the 13th Amendment says you can't be forced into servitude unless you're convicted of a crime. And then they came with the black codes, vagrancy laws, trespassing, loitering. If you didn't have a job, you was getting locked up. All of these things was happening, right? So they was sending you right back to jail to be a slave, right? To this day, it still happens, right? It's sweatshops in America. They make a lot of goods in prison. Victoria's Secret make a lot of their stuff in prison, right? Nike, a lot of other people. A lot of other things, right? The license plates, soap, agriculture, Idaho potatoes are cultivated in the prison, right? But anyway, the point that I'm trying to connect the dots here is that capitalism does not care about people. It never cared about you, right? And now you're a worker slave. You got to work 60 to 80 hours just to survive. They created the minimum wage just to barely give you enough money to feed yourself so that you can continue to be a worker slave. If you read about capitalist schooling in America, right, the university system is set up for you to become a worker ant, a worker slave, basically, right? This is what they're teaching you in school. They sell you a dream. You go to school, you graduate, upward mobility. That's not necessarily the truth, because in a capitalist system, you need to have somebody at the bottom. It's a social economic class caste system. Okay, I need you to understand this. All right? It's a social economic class caste system. Somebody's going to be at the top and somebody is going to be at the bottom. So how can you expect to be free under the system that has a caste system? Who you think is going to be at the bottom? Why you think people always complain about, oh, like the immigrants be coming up here, or everybody comes here from a different country and they surpass black folk? Don't get me wrong. Two things could be truth at once. It's just the slavery mentality of black folks, and it's also the outside meddling of the powers that be. So it's both of those things. I always preach about changing the mindset, right? Because that is true. We do contribute to some of the self-detrimental behaviors that we engage in. However, that doesn't take away that there's other external factors that are also working against us. So why do you think that everybody gets to surpass you and you stay in the same place? Because those other people that come here are not a threat. Their mindset is made up, and I'm going to go over there, make a little money, send it back home, right? The people here, though, their mindset is bent on changing the narrative, changing the system, causing disruption. And that is a problem for the people who are in power. And as long as they can prevent you from causing disruption, then they're okay. And you know how they prevent you from causing disruption? You don't control your neighborhoods. How are you going to get free if you don't even control your own economy? Right? How are you going to get free if you don't control the education in your community? We don't even control the community, right? You don't control the education that your children receive in the community. You don't control it. You don't have no real representation in government because you rely on the two-party system of the capitalist people who don't like you. I mean, they like you because you make money for them. You know, you're a worker and you're a slave. So they like that you make money for them. But they don't like you per se, right? They just like what you do for them. So question, how are you going to be free? You don't have your own political party to really represent you and really carry out the agenda of liberation. How? How are you going to get liberated in the two-party system? This is like going to court and you put in your trust on a public defender lawyer that went to school with the district attorney. They used to go to school together. They eat lunch together discussing your destiny, your future. How can you really trust that public defender that be sitting around probably with the judge and the prosecutor, and they be hee ha 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 about your life? It's the same thing that the Democrats and the Republicans do. They sit around and ha ha ha. They make the Republicans look like the boogeyman, and the Democrats are the superheroes with the cape that's going to save the day. And y'all buy that shit every single time. Most black people will vote Democrat no matter what. How are you going to get free like that? You don't have your own political party. You don't have your own representation, right? So when you need money for school, you don't have your own representation to advocate. You don't control your communities. You don't control the businesses there. They belong to the Arabs. They belong to the Poppies. Sometimes they don't even be living in the neighborhood, right? They belong to the Dunkin' Donuts, the Checkers. All of these stores don't belong to us. They don't belong to you. They're taking wealth out of your community, taking it somewhere else, and then you don't have the representation. You think because you have a few black faces in government that you have adequate representation? No, you need to create your own party. You need to create your own party that has your own goals, that can represent you, that can fight for you. We need that. That can fight for our schooling, that can fight for our neighborhoods, for our environment. So how are you going to get free? How are you going to get free in this system? Malcolm X said this, right? He said, only a fool will let his enemy educate his children. Only a fool will let his enemy educate his children. Right? He also said, you can't have capitalism without racism. So you wonder why racism doesn't go away. Because capitalism doesn't go away. It's a byproduct of it. Racism is a byproduct of capitalism. So while we are distracted trying to fight racism, we still falling victim to capitalism. You'll never be free until you're able to control your own destiny, until you're able to advocate for yourself properly, until you're able to be educated with adequate education, until you're able to have your own political party to fight for you, to pass bills for you, to pass laws for you. This is when you will start to kind of like see a shift. But to them, and a lot of black people know this. A lot of black people know that capitalism don't work, but they don't care, because we have a lot of black folks have embraced the idea of individualism. So a lot of black folks, they don't care. They just trying to get their slice, and that's it. And that's cool. That's cool. Everybody's entitled to do what they want. But I'm just here to tell you, you're never going to get free under capitalism. It's not going to happen. Don't buy into the notion of black capitalism. No. The system of capitalism needs to have somebody at the bottom, and somebody needs to be at the top. And that's just my spiel.